Happy International Women's Day 2021 and welcome to the She's All That video podcast. I'm your host, September Smith. I was so thrilled to have the opportunity to mark this Women's Day with a walk down memory lane with Japanese friends, catch up with what's happening there this year with respect to gender equality, and talk with a woman who is embodying the motto for IWD 2021, Choose To Challenge, as she campaigns to become the first female mayor of Japan's fourth largest city in one of the country's most conservative prefectures. I'm also hugely grateful to my guests for agreeing to have this challenging conversation in their second language, because after 15 years away, my Japanese sucks. She's all that. Hi, and welcome to the She's All That video podcast. And I'm your host, September Smith. And I am thrilled to say that today, on this International Women's Day edition of the podcast, I am talking with some old and new friends of mine from Nagoya, Japan, about International Women's Day there. I have some history that goes back there. One of the people that I'll be speaking with today and we were co-organizers in the early 2000s of the International Women's Day Festival in Nagoya, Japan. But I want to introduce my guest today. And the first guest is my friend of 20 years, Akane Kurihara. Akane, welcome.
Hello. Yeah.
Back when I first met Akane, she's always been a powerhouse. She was an environmental researcher and a policy advisor with the Aichi prefectural government. She's a longtime feminist activist and organizer. She's the former lead singer of the feminist punk band Mela. And she's the co-founder now of Aichi Association for the Realization of Female Leaders. That's kind of like Emily's List, getting women into office in Japan. And as I said, we used to be co-organizers of IWD back in the day. A new friend of mine that I met recently through Akane is Keiko Ogata. And Keiko is running for mayor of Nagoya this year in the mayoral race that's happening next month. Keiko had been working in Japan up until the time that she got married, and then she and her husband and then family had moved for many years around the world. They lived in the United States, Belgium, and France. Keiko returned to Japan in 2000 and became an interpreter. And it was after the Fukushima disaster of 10 years ago that she joined the Green Party. I am so happy to have you here talking with me today to discuss International Women's Day. Welcome. Now, what's happening this year? I was excited to see that there's actually something happening for International Women's Day in Nagoya and other cities this year. What's going on?
Well, we have a new uprising women group who protest against sexual crimes toward women. And there are some young activists who protest against female poverty. Well, we realized a lot of problems since 2019. Well, we have a raising movement.
Oh, interesting. So that's the focus. That's really cool. So what's been going on since 2019 that we've now got a new awareness and a new interest in women's rights?
First of all, in the April of 2019, we have our awful court ruling against sexual violence. We have 4 awful rulings. The worst was the daughter have been raped for 10 years or something by her real biological father, and the father ruled out not guilty in the local court. So, and that problem, since that ruling, well, we have a lot of women who stand up, and we started the flower demonstration. We called the demonstration flower demonstration.
So this demonstration is what you said there were 4 cases. Coincidentally, there were just 4 really severe cases with really bad rulings in the spring of 2019. So that kind of awakened people's awareness of maybe the lack of fairness in the court system.
Yes, that's right. And we heard Me Too movement around the world. And in the US and in South Korea too. And we had the same thing in Japan. We started the same movement in Japan.
So Akane, this flower demonstration is still happening?
Yeah, right. Every month we have a demonstration all over Japan. Many places in Japan.
What does that look like?
It's a we got together with a flower and hear the survivor's voice.
Oh, wow.
Just seeing here.
We stay and just hearing the
Just hearing the survivor's voice.
victim's voice story. Everyone needs to carry a flower, bunch of flowers.
So we call it flower demonstration.
So this is the 11th of every month. And where do people gather for this?
In Nagoya case, we got in a なんだ栄do you know 栄it is a place where when we were in 2002 or something.
Yeah, where we had the enormous IWD festival right there in the middle of Sakai.
That place every month.
Now that's fairly new. I mean, this kind of thing was not talked about. I mean, I lived in Japan for about 15 years, and as much as there were problems, it was not discussed in society.
Now we get together, kind of 20 or 30 people get together every month on 11th of the month at the center of Nagoya, and we carry flowers and we put the candles in the park, and we hear the victims' stories. Well, kind of quietly. Some victims don't want to be identified, so we try to avoid their exposure to the media. But we hear a lot of different stories. So we realize that the sexual violence is not rare. It often happens.
That's a point.
So we've got the issue of the sexual violence and kind of like the Japanese version of the Me Too movement. But you were also saying that there's been a real spike in poverty amongst women in the last couple of years. Tell me a bit about that.
One thing is the suicide case increase among young females.
Now, is that because of the poverty or the social situation?
Both, I think.
We don't know exactly what's happening among females, but maybe we assume the poverty, economical problems and the mental and the social.
Yeah, both. Also, a domestic violence case is increased in Japan.
And then with the pandemic and everybody having to be in their homes.
In home.
Domestic violence is going up. And like in North America, I understand that women have borne the greatest impact of the loss of jobs. Akane, you had shared some tables with me, the graphs about how it's by far women who have lost their livelihood. And I mean, is there any kind of program there to help out? Because if mom doesn't have any money and many families are just a single parent family, what happens with the children?
Right. Well, we have some volunteers who offer the help call or visiting victims or sexual violence victims, or those female victims are very vulnerable. So it is even difficult to reach them. We don't know where they are. So some have good willingness to call to the help call, but others just stay home.
Just stay home.
Well, we assume that because of a pandemic, females lose their jobs. Well, many work as a part-time job, part-time workers, so that they are the first people who get sacked. And many single mothers have even worse problem. They have to raise the children, and the children, well, during the lockdown of school, children stay at home. Well, single mothers need to stay with children, or just leave children at home alone. So even a difficult situation for single mothers. So like that, a lot of female work as part-time jobs.
So you were saying that this is actually manifesting as a spike, an enormous spike in suicides. I mean, I recall suicide was more of a male thing, back when I lived in Japan, and I've seen the numbers, the charts that Akane sent me, and it just spiked, especially last autumn. Women in like almost more than men were suddenly committing suicide because of, I guess, the poverty, the pressure, the domestic violence, the sexual violence. So the people are becoming women are becoming much more aware about what's happening in society.
Yeah, we think so.
So back in 2002, Akane, when we did our International Women's Day, we decided on the theme and we thought it was very provocative at the time. It was Japan, why number 41? And what we were referring to was the World Economic Forum in the rankings that year. As much as Japan was in the top 5 in industry, education, health, et cetera, when it came to the ranking for sexual equality, they were number 41 that year. So we were talking about how shocking is this. In the 20 years since then, Japan has dropped from 41 down to 121st place. Countries that you would maybe not consider even traveling to because they might, be considered unstable and dangerous, have a higher ranking for women's equality than Japan. What's going on?
Actually, another countries was tried to improve the many about gender equality. Also, Japan made some effort, but it wasn't enough. I think, especially in the political involvement and economic management or something.
Business executives.
I had read something about Abe's she economy and how it was after many years, it was just proved, it sounded like it was going to be a big help for gender equality, but it was just smoke and mirrors, no real impact or change in the situation. So that, telling me about the numbers, it's gone from 41, it's dropped 80 places down to 121 out of 153. It's pretty near the bottom.
Yes.
It prompted me to go look at this World Economic Forum report. And what they had said was that Japan's, and I quote, Japan's standing in the international community will keep plummeting due to its failure to empower women. In their estimation, the World Economic Forum says if Japan does not start having more gender equality in the power, in the governance of the country, nothing's going to change.
That's right. For gender equality among Japanese female, their percentage of business executives, female executives stays 10%, and female politicians 10% something. Because men says if female are able, female have a talent, they can raise the career by themselves. So they don't have any quota or any help, special assistance toward the female. So that's why Japanese females stay the same. Other countries try to improve the female situation and ranking. So Japan's economy used to be good, very strong, but after the bubble burst, the Japan's economy go down.
And that was considered to be like around 1989, 1990, the bubble burst. That was 30 years ago.
And after, even 30 years ago, well, we don't have talented women working place. So the half of the talents of the population were not wasted. That's right. So I think that's why Japan cannot recover their economy. Their problem gets more serious, like the difference between rich and poor increased. So when a female stay as a part-time job, when female cannot join the decision making, well, the economy and society will not get improved, I think.
And also, if you have the same, and it has been the same party since the end of the Second World War. There has not, was there a small one little time when there was a change?
Yes, just 3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
So 3 years out of like almost 80 years. So the same mentality and the same thinking that was very effective to help Japan recover from the devastation of the Second World War and rebuild and develop and build it to become the economic power that it was in the 1980s. That same mentality, that same 20th century male mentality is still in power.
That's right. So man-centered mentality. Man work outside of the house. A female stayed at home, care children, the household chores, and the care for elderly. So every like this. But now, well, mothers and wives cannot stay at home. They need earn more money because men's salary get down. So the family need to be afforded by both men and mother and father working salary.
And international research shows, both through the United Nations and through the World Economic Forum, that in the countries where women are more economically empowered and have more of a role in, earning a wage and say in the society, the GDP tracks with that. You have a good situation for women, your GDP is going to be stronger. The numbers bear that out. So that old way of thinking does not work anymore.
That's right. That's right.
So, which brings me, Keiko, to our whole subject of you're running for mayor. Now, you're running for mayor in Nagoya, which is in Aichi Prefecture, where I have lived and where you guys live. What's the history of women in politics in Aichi?
Yeah, actually, in Aichi Prefecture, we have no government leader or town mayor or city or mayor or village mayor. No
Never.
one.
You've never had a female?
Yeah. Among 47 prefectures in Japan, only 10 or something very rural prefecture was in such a situation. Yeah.
But Aichi isn't Nagoya like the fourth biggest city in Japan?
Yeah, right.
Well, that's not
Even
exactly
so,
a rural area.
Yeah, right. Actually, Aichi has a Toyota company. As you know.
Yes.
So very industrialized part, and also a very conservative place, I think. So, men is ruling the society in Aichi.
Well, when's the election this year, Keiko?
It is April 25th. Yes.
Coming up. Oh, geez, I'll be very excited to see how that turns out. Well, the hashtag and the phrase for this year's International Women's Day is Choose To Challenge. And you're choosing to challenge this whole thing of there's never been a woman mayor, there's never been a woman governor in Nagoya or in Aichi. So, I mean, we've talked about why women's representation is important. And for that very reason, I think it's essential that more women like you get elected. So what are the things that you are campaigning on? You said you had 4 major platform items.
Yes. Well, I decided to run for mayoral election to raise voice about the climate change. That is very urgent. Well, we need to decrease the emission, CO2 emission by 45, almost half and cut in 10 years. But that is the main reason. And man-centered mentality is always destructive for nature and development at any cost approach. But I think female can focus on what is sustainable and what is good for everybody. Because once problem started, the women have to clean up the mess. That is always women.
Yeah,
So
I think that changes how we look at things. We don't go just like, here's the solution. It's, this is a possible solution. Who's going to clean up the mess if it goes sideways? So yeah, there's a different way of looking at things. So you've got the environment of the climate, which, as you say, this has to happen in the next 10 years. And we have known since the Kyoto Protocol in the 1990s, which was almost 30 years ago. We've known this was necessary. We only have 10 years left, kids. Come on. So it's essential that action be taken now. So that's one of your planks. And what else are you campaigning on?
Yes. Well, besides the environmental issue, of course, we need to recover from the pandemic impact. That is a big mess which the COVID-19 made to us. We have serious economic problem and social problem. As we discussed, the suicide rate raised and the economic problem gets serious among female part-time workers and single mothers. So, we need to hear more from women and children. Take care of children. Children have serious problem too. So the second issue is recover from COVID-19 impact.
Well, a lot of countries are looking at their recovery plan right now.
Yeah.
And people, I think, that are more far-sighted realize this is an opportunity to change the direction of our society and kind of renegotiate that social contract. Like, what's important now? We've got to come up with a new paradigm for this. And we need new voices at the table. We need women decision makers to be part of that if you're going to get a different outcome.
That's right. That's right. We need to change their philosophy, or totally change. So the women, I think women can change, because women were forced to be at the bottom of the society, in the workplace, and at home, in school. So women can, raise their voice and awareness.
But I think it should be noted that as much as traditionally women in Japan, I remember when I lived there, as soon as you were of a certain age, was like, shouldn't you get married now? And then once you're married, it was pushed out of the workplace. But Japanese women are highly educated. The rate of university and college level education there for girls is one of the best in the world. So it's not like that. Not that anybody should ever doubt that women have an ability to be making decisions for these kind of things, but like, these are educated people. And I often think of things in terms of, if aliens came down to the earth and they were trying to understand our world, and they were going, let's see, we have these humans, half of them have no power. They have no voice. They have no money. What's going on with that? Why aren't they taking, because they have something to contribute. This society would be richer and better if everyone was contributing. But we just take it as normal that, of course, the men should run everything. Time for women's voices. So you were saying you've got the recovery, you've got climate change. You mentioned children, and that is not a small thing. All over the world, with the impacts of the pandemic, we're seeing children not being able to go to school. There's mental problems. There's nutritional problems because of impoverished families. That's huge. And I think women's voices on that issue would be very, very critical to making sure we get that right.
That's right.
What's the situation with children in Japan right now? Is that being spoken about?
No, children are raised mainly by mothers, and children having a problem too. They are not taught democratic issue.
Democracy. Oh, of course.
They don't learn what democracy is. They just learn how friendly to others. What is the harmony in the society, or in the classroom, or in the family. So some children who have for example, very talented, even talented children can't show their talent, because somebody will envy somebody, so somebody can bully you because of their talent. So stay harmonious among others. But all they taught. So I think they are frustrated. And during the pandemic lockdown, that children were the first people who were locked down. The school closed for 4 months. They need to stay at home. Even before the restaurants and the stores are closed. And are the first people who forced to be at home.
So who was home taking care of them if mom was working?
That's right. So they have academic problem. They have mental or emotional, especially. I think emotional problem. They get lonely, isolated, separated from their friends, and mother's always scolding. Doing this, don't do mess. Mothers get nervous too.
They're stressed out. And when people say, the kids are lonely, that's a big deal. These are developing brains. They're developing their brain, their body, their psyche. This is a really traumatic event for the kids. It's not just they can't go to school to play with their friends. Psychiatrists are seeing this is huge. So I'm glad to hear that that's part of your platform. And finally, I was rather surprised to hear that the fourth thing on your platform was gender and women's issues.
Yeah, gender equity. But that is the straight issue I want to insist: equity between genders, female, men, and the sexual minorities. And even children are not. Children don't know how to raise their voice when the sexual attacker approaches. Don't touch my body, like something like this. So gender equity is very important. Gender equity education is also important, and we need to fix the attitudes of people at home, at work, and even in the government, even in a municipality of Nagoya. I think it is very important.
Oh yeah, and if I think it would just be so amazing if you were elected mayor. I think that's exactly what Aichi needs now, is a strong, intelligent woman who's got ideas and priorities for the future.
Yes.
On those 4 very, very important issues.
Mm-hmm.
So the election is the 25th of April.
25th of April. Female need to join the decision-making process. Female need to be decision makers. So that means there are more female politicians needed, more business executives in companies and corporations, and in local and municipal government, and national government, of course. We need more workers and managers and executives and mothers, and equality between mothers and fathers, in the more family tie at home.
Awesome. We want the first mayor in IG, and I would be very, very pleased to say that I had the pleasure of interviewing her and
thank you
for International Women's Day. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. It's been a pleasure. There's so much more we couldn't have gotten into. And Akane, we definitely have to do another discussion because you have just a wealth of knowledge about the history of the women's movement in IG. But for now, we'll call that a wrap. Thank you so much, gals.
Thank you.
Thank you, September.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Don't forget to take a look down in the notes to find any of the links to the goodies we talked about in today's podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel so you don't miss the next episode. Rate us or review us on iTunes or on YouTube, and share us with a friend that you think might just need a bit of inspiration to start doing her own awesome shit. Do you know an incredible gal that's all that you think the world needs to know more about? Head on over to our Facebook or our Instagram channel and DM me. Tell me about her. We'll see if we can't get her on the She's All That podcast.